Good evening, everyone. I have 6:30, and I'll call the meeting to order and ask the city manager to call the roll.
Jeff Elsoff,
Here.
Dr. Joel Schroeder,
Here.
Justin Smith,
Here.
John Welch,
Present.
Diane Wynn. You have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. So the second item is citizen concerns, and I see we do have several citizens here. So if anyone would like to speak to council, really the only thing on the agenda tonight is the Woodlawn Project. So this is an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak to council. We'll give you 3 minutes, and if you've just approached the podium, we'll let you speak. Okay. We do ask you to give your name and address.
Sure. My name's David Keel. I live over at 5146 Brookstone Street in Central Park. President of the HOA for the villas, and I'm also the moderator for the social media site next door for the town of Bel Aire. So I have a lot of oversight on what people are gossiping about, complaining about, and wanting. The first thing I'm sure everyone realizes is they want a brush site, but everyone understands that there is expense associated with that and liabilities. So at one point it got so heated, I actually had to shut the conversation down. The other thing is Bel Aire roads. If there's not a complaint a day, nobody's been on social media. I think that with one of the major expenses being the underground culverts for storm drain diversion, I think that $2.5 million is a lot of money, and I think it can go a lot of ways and a lot better on roads. One citizen that lives along there did state that 5 or 6 years ago there was flooding there, and it got into their basement because the culverts couldn't handle the water and on the storm drains that are currently there. And I had responded with, I think if you get that much water, if it's underground or above ground, it's not going to handle it. There's going to a certain point that nothing can handle the amount of water that you have. So do you want to spend $2.5 million, or do you want to do something cheaper with, like they've done along Maze Road? If you're heading on either side of Maze Road, you'll actually see, which is a recessed sidewalk, if you will. So that seems to handle the water there. But again, I'm sure there's times it doesn't, because of you get 18 inches of rain in 24 hours. I don't think anything's going to handle that amount of water. So I think you could honestly spend $2.5 million better somewhere else with the everyday citizen driving on a potholed road wanting to see pavement there. That's just my opinion. I thought I'd let you know that with all the complaints and oversight, this is this whole town of Bel Aire. So I have a pretty good ear of it. And anyways, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Does anyone else wish to address the council tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to ordinance. Do we have somebody else? Oh, please come to the podium.
Thank you. My name is Jay Hinkle. I live at 4800 North Indian Oak Street.
Can you pull your microphone up, please, so we can hear you?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight because I saw the posting on Nextdoor. It was my first notice of what was occurring, and I have some questions more than anything in comments today. First of all, the gentleman has described at least one design alternative, and I don't know whether you have looked at those design alternatives and decided that this is the enclosed sewers are the only thing that is viable for us. I would question whether or not there is a significant value to them. I think it has an aesthetic value. I suppose that we've had the existing ditches for 40 years, and I don't know what the incidence of accidents have been, if it has any kind of public safety value or not, but I would ask you to consider that. There obviously is the labor component that's involved in maintaining open ditches compared to closed sewer. I would hope you would have considered that as well. He's asked that that the possibility be looked at to do road improvements in other locations throughout the city. That probably would have a greater citywide benefit, although I would have to admit I drive that stretch of Woodlawn probably more than any other road in Bel Aire. So I will certainly will benefit if the improvements are made as intended. I don't know whether if the money that is allocated right now, if there's cost savings to an alternate design, if that is something that can be shifted to maintenance or improvement of other roads. As you can see, I got no answers here today, but ideas that I hope will play into your consideration before you come to this expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else? And I'll try not to cut anybody off if we have anybody else. Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to item 4, ordinance resolution and final actions. The first item is A, consideration of resolution pledging matching funds in the amount of $3,872,000 to remit Kansas Department of Transportation payments for construction work and engineering on the Woodlawn Reconstruction Project. And I did get a lot of emails on this, partly because I asked for it, but that's okay. So the interesting thing about it is I got like 17 emails, which is quite a few for a particular subject. Okay. And the preponderance of them, 11, said pave the ditch, no storm sewer. I don't know if that's doable, and I would like to ask if that's an option that we can do that instead of doing storm sewers, and if we will see significant savings in there. I'm not the expert here, so it's a question I have. I did have 2 said do the project, or 3 that said do the project as proposed, and 2 said to shelve the project until the costs come down. So, and a couple of them that actually said don't cripple our budget this project. So those are, I've tried to summarize them in categories. How people address things, they always say it ways. So, but that's kind of where the conclusions that I've been able to come to. Thank you. And so that's, I'm not saying what we have to do here. I want to hear all input, but it's a concern that of the cost. So, and I think everybody shares that concern. So I'll open up for discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
so at our last meeting, we tabled this item with a couple of specific questions that we were looking to get addressed. You know, obviously, the reason that we tabled it is because the bid came in way higher than what we were expecting, with our annual debt service about double what we were originally planning to be spending annually on this project, which caused us to ask some questions about, hey, is there anything that we can do to still move forward with the project but reduce the cost a little bit? And so I guess the first question that I'd like to get clarity on is, at this point in the project where we've already been out to bid with it and WAMPO has granted some matching funds, did we get clarity on what flexibility that we have to evaluate individual line items in the project and adjust them for cost savings?
Yes, and in fact, since I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I appreciate you saving it so that I could get some input, I've spent all day today putting together some question or answers to your questions and stuff. So if it would be all right, I've got a PowerPoint I'd like to kind of go over, and I think I'll answer pretty much all your questions that you had at your last meeting.
That'd be great. Yes, please.
So,
Just to clarify, it says workshop, but this is an official city council meeting.
yes, this is it's a special meeting. Typically, it's our workshop, but it's our special meeting. So the first thing I wanted to go over with history, I've got gray hair, and so I like talking about history and how did we get to where we are. And this is really unique, I think, to give you a bigger perspective, because this is a big decision you're making. But actually, improving Woodlawn, the discussion started in 1999. So this has been talked about for over 20 years. So back in the early years, WAMPO suggested a 4-lane. In 2004, WAMPO approved a 4-lane with a traffic light at 45th. The estimated cost was $3.4 million. The city's share was going to be around $875,000. And so that was 18 years ago. And it was scheduled for 2007. I'd like to thank Gary. He's here. He helped me with a lot of this. I knew things were going on, and some of it occurred when I got here. So he helped me kind of bring some of this that was before my time. In 2008, the city determined that it couldn't afford the improvements because at that point we were looking at how do we finance the debt on the land. And we were looking at a 24 mil increase to cover that. And so we didn't want to take on the additional cost and construction project of WAMPO, of the Woodlawn. So we asked WAMPO to move it, and they moved it to 2013. So in 2013, the city submitted a revised application to go from a 5-lane, to go to a 5-lane from 37th to the railroad tracks, and then a 3-lane from 45th to, or from the railroad tracks to 45th. And that was based on traffic projections, and MKEC did those for us, and they're here. And they were saying that basically this design could handle the traffic projections for the next 20 years. And so that's where what you're considering today came from. So in 2016, Woodlawn was approved for funding in 2019 with an estimated cost of $7.1 million, 7.2 almost. So, and the feds were going to cover about 4 million, or about 4 million. So the city was about 2.9 million. So we've been talking about this for 22 years. So we've got the projected costs in 2020. We knew what those were. And we were able to go to WAMPO and get some additional funding from them, which put it around 5.5, their share, and that was about 2 million for us. But then in April of this year, with the costs of projects, materials, things like that coming up, we had MKAC give us another bid or estimate. And based on what they were seeing from recent bids, they were looking at the project cost was increasing to, and our share would be about 2.5 million. And then in September last month, it was bid, and it came over the low bid was over 1.7 million, which brought ours up to the 4.2, which is what you're considering tonight. So the big question you're looking at is how do we pay for that, and how does that affect our future projects and our future streets? So I asked Ted to pull one of his exciting graphs together, and you've seen this. But what I asked him to do is pull out 53rd Street. Let's focus on one issue at a time. Let's look at Woodlawn and how we deal with that, and what does that do? So basically, what this graph shows is that pulling out 53rd, if we were to, or if you were to approve the project as is, the 4.2 million that we would cover. Basically, in 2023, it looks like we're having about 350,000 we could put towards streets. And then in 2024, it jumps up to 450, and then 550, and then by 2027, we're about 1 million. And that's based on everything we know today without any other changes to debt service. So your options are, the bids are good through the 22nd of this month. So that's why you scheduled this special meeting, to get a decision made. If you don't make a decision tonight or by the 22nd, KDOT will make the decision for us. And KDOT will either accept the bid and move the project forward, or they'll reject the bids and it stops the project. So, so again, that's the important piece of you making the decision. You determine what it is that you want to do. If the project is stopped, then WAMPA will take that money and they'll put it towards another project in the tip. So some other project that another city, municipality is working on, they'll get the money. So you can accept the bid tonight and move the project forward. You could reject the bid, and then we could ask to re-engineer it. So in other words, we would look at what Justin was talking about. What could we take out? and then we would have to rebid it, taking those projects out. I will tell you that Ann and KDOT are concerned that when they see rebids with things taken out, they don't see a lot of change. So there's no guarantee that you would say tonight, let's pull $1 million worth of stuff out of this, that you'll get $1 million savings. They'll rebid the project. You may get the same price. You may get $500,000 savings. There's just no guarantee. You don't know. But it has to stay within the original concept. So you couldn't say, well, let's just make it a 2-lane. It's got to stay with what's similar to what you've bid. You could just pay to rebuild the straight. You could say, listen, we don't want this. We're not going to spend this 4.2 match. You can have the money WAMPO, and we'll just spend our own money to do whatever we want to do to it. Or we could just, again, do nothing and just repair it and hope to get some more use out of it. So if you end the project, as I said, it's taken us 20 years to get here. And what will happen? How long will it take to ever get it done? And what will the cost be? We have the citizens have an expectation of a 3-lane, because you remember when this was put out in 2019, there was input of a 5-lane versus a 3-lane and all of those types of things. And as the mayor mentioned, and it's still true today, that there are some that really think that it should be a 5-lane. Some are good with a 3-lane. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is we've already paid $500,000 to have it engineered. So to get what we have today, to get the project bid, we have an opportunity to leverage city funds to utilize federal dollars. So it's not a 80-20 like we had originally hoped. It's now a 40-60, but there's still an ability to get a $10 million road for $4 million. And then, of course, the other question that we have no answer, but it's worth asking is, will Woodlawn ever be funded? I mean, we've got 20 years to today, and is WAMPO going to say, or do you really want to do, why would we even fool with trying to approve Woodlawn? Because it seems like every time you get approval for it, you push the can down the road. And then the other issue is, we've been talking with KDOT about how do we do some improvements on 254, an overpass at Rock and Greenwich, interchange at Webb, and they're going to ask us. They've already asked us to help pay for the management plan. The third, they're going to ask us to pay for some of the infrastructure. And what the concern is, if we say, well, this is too much, we're not going to do it, then are they going to look at us when we say, well, yeah, we're going to give $1 million or $2 million to all of these improvements you're doing on 254? Are they going to say, well, are you really? Or is it just when we get to that point, you'll give us whatever you think you want to give us, or whatever? Again, I don't know. It's just a question that they could certainly ask us. So, could we repair the street? Yeah, we could. We've been doing a lot of repairs, a lot of thermal crack repairs. And Ann and I are guesstimating that if we did a thermal crack repair, did a slurry seal, restriped it, we need to go in and fix the ditches, because all the ditches were left with all the utilities moved, because it was based on what was going to be happening. So we'd have to go in and fix all the ditches. So we're looking at about $500,000. The issue is that it doesn't, how long will that last? We've got, at some point the base is going to fail and it has to be replaced. We know that there's traffic congestion at 45th and Woodlawn. We hear it. We know that there's more growth happening, and so it's only going to get worse. We know that there's stormwater issues that are down there. I think someone brought that up, that if we get a torrential rain, where Sonic is at, it kind of floods that area. So there's some stormwater issues. We're not improving any of the access to the businesses that are north of 37th that are in Buck Alley's area. And then what's our long-term plan going to be for Woodlawn? That's a question you'd have to ask, is if we do some repairs and just bring it up to the way it is, then what are we going to do with it in 5 years or 10 years? So we could replace it, and I think this is something that the mayor had mentioned. So Ann and I just kind of put some rough estimates together. You know, you got to take it out. We got to take out what's there. It's got to be all regraded. We would do the 3 lanes south of the railroad tracks. If we did a 2 lane, which is what's there, keep in mind it's a 2 lane, but there are shoulders there. So the street is actually wider than a 2 lane because you have shoulders on each side. You got engineering, because now we're going from what was proposed with WAMPO to a 2 or 3 lane with open ditches. So we've got to have some re-engineering done. We'd have to have inspections. Sidewalks, probably couldn't even put sidewalks in there because you're going to regrade the ditches and may not have room for sidewalks. So you're at about 2.5 million. If we wanted to increase, go 3 lanes all the way from the railroad tracks, we're getting close to 3 million. So, you know, obviously that's less than the 4 million we're being asked to pay. The question is, you know, is there a point where it's worth spending a certain amount to get the $10 million street? That's just a question that you all are going to have to answer. So my recommendation is, first of all, let's tackle Woodlawn. 53rd, you're going to talk about it later, but I think we just wait. Let's hold off on 53rd doing anything. We're spending $60,000 to do some repairs that hopefully buy us, you know, 6 months or a year. We know that Woodlawn, the current with the with the traffic projections, the 3 lane should handle for 20 years. That design does allow for a 5 lane. So at some point down the road in 10 years, if the council says, you know, that 3 lane is just choking traffic too much, let's go back and add a couple more lanes. It can be done. We know that the costs are probably not going to be decreasing. When we look back over the last 20 years from what it was originally planned, it's up over 175% in 20 years. So, you know, the question is, does spending $4 million to get $10 million street make sense? Can we take out some projects to reduce the cost? That was Justin had asked that. Yes, you can. You can take out the sidewalks. You can take out the trees. You can take out the traffic light. But by 2 things, by removing those are the things that most people are going to notice. They're going to notice that there's no sidewalk, and why can we not get to the sidewalk down at 37th and then there are sidewalks north of 45th? Why is there no stoplight? Can you imagine if we were to put all those turn lanes in there with no stop, with a 4-way stop, what it's going to be like? Because again, the road was constructing turn lanes, right turn lanes, center turn lanes, and you're going to have a 4-way stop. So you can imagine what that's going to be like. The other thing I see it as is, so you would say, let's say you could get $1 million savings out of a $10 million project, 10%. But the things that we would pull out are the things that people are going to notice. And it's just like what I compare it to is, you decide you're going to go buy a new car. A new car is $50,000. You don't want to spend 50, you want to spend 45. So you go in and say, let's not do air conditioning. So you get your car for 45 with no air conditioning. And then in July, you're saying, why didn't I spend 5,000 extra and get air conditioning? And that's the concern I have is, we pull it out now, will it ever be put back in? And are you going to have citizens calling and saying, why did you not put a sidewalk down there? Why is there not trees? Why is there not a traffic light? The other thing that I think we can look at some savings or some help is, we have talked to Sedgwick County. That Sedgwick County actually owns a portion of Woodlawn down there south of the railroad tracks. And I've talked to them, and they want us to annex that. And I said, we're going to rebuild Woodlawn. Would you pay a portion? And we annex. And they said, yeah, they were thinking 10%. So if that's true, then that's about $400,000. So if all we have to do is say, we're going to annex it. We take care of it anyway. I mean, Sedgwick County doesn't do anything down there. We're the one that does all the snow plowing and everything. So if we got an agreement with them, we'd annex it. There's $400,000 we could get to take off that $4 million. And so that helps. So then I know 53rd is next, but it kind of ties into what you're thinking is, again, let's hold off on 53rd Street. We're spending $65,000 to buy us a year. At the conference I was at this week, the National League of Cities were there, and they were talking about this next stimulus package, and they think it's going to pass. And in that stimulus package is infrastructure. They're not sure. They're keeping their fingers crossed that it will be for streets, but for sure they know it's going to be utilities and some of those things. So by buying us a few months, what we could do is then maybe we could get some stimulus money to pay for 53rd or a portion of it. If we can't get the road paid for, stormwater is included in a infrastructure. So maybe we could pull out the stormwater piece of it, which is a big piece. Putting in ditches and culverts and all that stuff is expensive. So maybe we could get half of it paid for with that spending package. And then the other thing it does is that if you were to approve moving forward on Woodlawn tonight, holding off on 53rd, we could get the year end over and see what our year end numbers look like. And then that would give us a better picture of what we have available to spend in the following years. And then we could look at, is there ways that we can get funding for 53rd and maybe get that paid for or mostly paid for without borrowing $3 million. So that was all I had. Those are my thoughts. And we've got MKECs here, Garver's here, so we got, and Ann's here, so we got plenty of engineers. And Ted's here, so he can go over any numbers you want. And then, of course, I'm here, so we're happy to answer any question you guys have.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I would like to hear from Jay at MKEC, and I don't know if anybody's talked with you about the possibility of eliminating storm sewers and just going with ditches and what that would do to the project, or what your thoughts on that would be. But I would like to hear what you think on that.
Well, Ann did contact me late last week and asked that I look at some value engineering ideas. There are a few that just in our initial phone conversation, we've decided, man, that's not even an option. As we thought about it, there were some logical things that could be taken out, but I didn't want to just list those and list the price. I wanted to list you my recommendation as well. Basically, at first here to address the storm sewer, Ann talked about when the WAMPO application was first put in, there was a scope of the project. And there are certain things in that scope that if we would rebid this project, pull some things out, redesign, get it out to bid here in a few months, that is possible, but everything has to follow that original scope. I believe one of those original scope items is it was going to be a street, a turn from a rural type street with ditches into an urban street with curb and storm sewer. So I don't even know if KDOT would allow that yet. I don't know, Ann, if you have anything to add on top of that, if that's a specific question that has at this point been asked to KDOT. But besides that, whether it's possible or not, that would be a very difficult thing to do in the time frame we're talking about. And really, if you leave the current ditches that are there, there's problems that have to be solved that just may be quite impossible. And I think the biggest one is one of the things in that scope was putting in a 10-foot shared use path for bikes and pedestrians on one side of the road. Right now, we have sidewalk on the other side, but it appears that's not a requirement of the project. But just putting those, today, the road sits up high, we come down, we have pretty good sized ditches, and then it comes and matches existing ground where it meets all the houses. What we have now, we've lowered that road, we've sloped everything out, and we put in a large storm sewer system to take care of the water. And there was a comment made that we will have storms that exceed that stormwater's capacity, and how that's handled, because the street is now low, it will serve in those very extreme events as a path for the water to get down to the culvert there in the pond in the middle of the project. Those ditches, I'm not even sure what the capacity of those ditches, because that was something we never considered to keep as part of the project. So one, we'd have to check to make sure those ditches can meet the same capacity we're talking about today. Two, if we now were putting in that storm sewer or that, not storm sewer, we're putting in that shared use path, that's going to take not only 10 feet extra space, but that the path has to be sloped into the ditch. It's going to take ditch capacity, so the ditches won't carry as much. And then now we have a path that's like on Mays Road that's recessed, and those sidewalks do get covered up a lot, and they get covered up with silt, and I'm sure they're a big maintenance problem. So just to put that shared use path in anyone, it's going to be a very difficult thing to do. There are other improvements we've made. One, I know where the existing ditches are at every side road, there's culverts under there. All of those culverts, they're of different sizes and such. So some of them may require to pass the water the way we want. They would have to get bigger. Well, now we've got a deal where while our road's high, we've got to tie into existing streets. It's just going to be a very difficult thing to do. I mean, really, to keep open ditches, we're really talking about a complete redesign of the project, not just tweaks like I think what KDOT is intending us to do, or would allow us to do if we were going to do that. So that, just on that big of an item, it's not practical. Maybe, it may be not possible to do that and redesign that in the next few months. So, but things that can't, but we did take an exhaustive search through some of the things in there and really considered ideas. One idea that it's just, reducing the pavement down. We have a 3-lane pavement to go to 2, but I think that was, again, something that was in the original scope of the project, that it would be at least a 3-lane pavement north of the tracks. We talked about, I don't think there was a requirement, but we talked about we do have some turn lanes in there, getting rid of a turn lane, the right turn lane into Perryton and a right turn lane at 45th. Those could be, that's just not going to save that much money. So, we did come up with a list that if you sum up with the list, it does start to get a little, it starts to add up. And each one's independent. It could be picked and chosen. And I was going to go through those with you now and go through that and the kind of about. And I think one of the things that's already been mentioned is the easiest target is to eliminate the trees and plantings that we're going to put in. Now, I know Jason Gish was our landscape architect on the project. He certainly talked a lot about placemaking. He had ideas to do more than we were able to afford already. It's not going to affect the function of the road, but that would be the first target thing that could go. That came in at a bid at around $150,000, $160,000. So right there, we're reducing the cost. We also wanted to apply sod to all disturbed area, which is quite a bit on this project. We plan to put sod back so you have an immediate cover. The sod does 2 things. One, it prevents erosion because you're covering it as soon as the sod goes down, and the sod will establish quicker, easier, and it'll be something that the public would really like. We could get rid of sod and put seed down. That was a big price item. In fact, the low bidder has the sod price was really high. So that was my next target on there. That would probably save over $100,000, maybe $125,000 on the project. You still have, if you get rid of the sod, that's the difference in the price between sod and seed. Now there's some other costs of some erosion control protection that would be added back in with something that can be calculated. So I'm saying you'd have $100,000 to $125,000 savings from going from sod to seed. Another area we put into the plans was, since we're getting rid of the Woodlawn Court up by the fire station in the park, we were concerned because people park there. So one thing we added to the plans was some on-street parking on Gunnison Street on the south side of the park. That's a small item, but that would probably be one of the easier targets, just because it can just be taken out and it's not going to affect the function of anything else. That would save about $25,000. Another item was, we've done a lot of water work recently and some sanitary sewer repairs. One thing we wanted to do originally with the project was upgrade all of that, especially under the section of the railroad tracks. This summer, we didn't replace the sections under the railroad track because that would double the amount of permitting and double the amount of the contractor permitting to do that. And also it would affect traffic control. So we left the portion of the sanitary sewer that crosses under the railroad track and the water line under the railroad track as existing now, and we will replace those with this project. Right now, the system functions fine just with the temporary connections we have from our new to existing for both for the water line. Sanitary, we didn't do any work near the railroad, but those could be eliminated. I really do not recommend we eliminate that, but doing so, both the water and sanitary would save probably another $100,000 or $225,000, up to $250,000. But again, those sections, when we televised the sanitary sewer, there was the section under, like it really needed maintained, and it was the worst section of sewer. So that's something, it's there, it's an option, but I do not recommend it. Two other items that are targets are the traffic signal at 45th and Woodlawn. That traffic signal is warranted. That's one thing. Our traffic engineer did a warrant analysis, and we're at the threshold to where you have to, if it was not warranted, the feds and the state would not let you spend money on this project to do that. But it is warranted. Is it necessary at this point? You could probably get by without it sometime soon before the 20 years of the design life of the project. You would probably have to install that. Right now, it's 100% cost, and those were very high bid items. I think those were high bid items because signal components, some of the controller computer parts may be very hard to get right now. Also, the steel poles themselves are probably in high demand right now. Those bid very high for what I've never seen anything. They bid twice as high as what we're used to seeing on signals just like that. But eliminating the traffic signal at 45th would save $275 or reduce the cost of the project by $275,000. We also have the pedestrian signal, the signalized crossing there by the park to get across the street. That also bid double the price we're used to seeing, and eliminating that from the project would save $100,000, actually $110,000. One other item we looked at is the scope of the project did include a shared use path. So we didn't think of it, but the sidewalk that's on the east side of the street, we looked at the possibility of eliminating all of the sidewalk along the east side, plus going up all the side streets. There is also a stretch of sidewalk we're going to connect from the first block west on 45th Street just to connect some sidewalk pieces. And I threw that into the price of elimination, and that would save or reduce the project cost by another $115,000. That's my list. And if you sum up that list, I believe it's just over $1 million for all those items. I also put, I noted the impact project. All of those, the street would function fine. You'd have the intersection would be the first thing that would be detrimental to the actual functioning of the street. But a lot of these items are not street related, like the utilities, like the pedestrian access, the safety of pedestrians crossing the street, and just eliminating just the whole eliminating of pedestrian way. I think that during the public sector of this, or the public portion of this project, that was something I know the public was really happy to see, that we were putting not only a bike path, but a sidewalk on the other side of the street. And it's, in fact, I remember we talked about a roundabout at one time at 45th Street, and it was the pedestrian issues up there that really just was, I remember the public coming out real strong that they don't want a roundabout for the pedestrian reasons. So one thing, I guess in total, I don't recommend doing any of those, because I believe when we designed this project, we went through the public process. I've been here several times to talk, and I believe everything. We didn't have a lot of fluff or a lot of bells and whistles in the plan. It was basically providing the plans to give the city what I heard and what I think everybody in this up here in the council heard was what warranted for the project. I know we spent a lot of time talking about 3-lane versus 5-lane, and we seemed on that bubble there. But already I think that helped the project cost, just keeping the 3-lane at this point. I've also looked at, well, what are their possibilities? Getting rid of storm sewer, I just don't see that working at all. Another, option, do we go to a 2-lane section instead of 3-lane? I'm not sure KDOT will allow that, but even then, with the turn lanes we have, where we have those, I believe it's just going to kill intention of the project, kill the spirit of the project. I just am afraid. And I think it was already discussed that people will call and say, hey, I thought we were going to get this. I thought we were going to get this. And anything else off of these items. In fact, even these items on the list I made, I believe are going to get to a point where the public's just not going to be happy. I know I'm the engineer and not the accountant here, but my engineering professional recommendation is we do not cut anything from the project and rebid. One other item on that, usually when you do a rebid on a project, you don't get the desired results. September and October are a time of year when the contractors are finishing up their jobs and they're saying, what are we going to do with our crews next year? This is a perfect time to bid because right now the low bidder on this project has said, oh, I'm covered next year. We're going to have a lot of crews out there. If this thing gets rebid, he's going to bid a project next month at KDOT, maybe win it and say, I'm not even going to bid this project again. Then the second low bidder may get the bid. He's not going to well, if we reduce things, the cost will come down, but we start getting past these first few contractors who have moved on, we may get a higher bid even with cutting things out. That's, again, I've seen that happen in my career, and it's not it's usually you don't get the results that you hope to get. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
just one question for clarity. I think what I'm understanding is that changing or removing any single one of these items would trigger a process where we would have to rebid this project and delay the start. Is that correct?
that's the way I understand it from what Anna's recent conversations with KDOT.
So something as simple as let's do grass seed instead of sod. That triggers us to need to do a rebid and delay the start of the project. I just want to make sure we understand the impact there.
In my conversations with Todd Solfrank with KDOT, he's the local projects representative, he did indicate that any changes to this project, we cannot make any change orders, change the project in any substantial way without giving them a new complete set of plans, which would take Jay a month or two to put together, take KDOT a whole 3 months to go through their entire review process again, and then put it out on the streets in about 5 months.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Mr. Engelmeyer, could you clarify the $150,000 on the sidewalk on the, was that just the east side or is that both the bike path and the sidewalk?
That was just the sidewalk on the east side,
Okay.
but it was also sidewalk connecting into existing sidewalks in each neighborhood on that east side. And then there is a 1 block stretch of sidewalk from Woodlawn to the first block east on the south side of 45th Street. That was part of that cost. You would still have that shared use path to connect to 37th Street, and it would go up to 45th and essentially end at that point.
So this sidewalk goes north of 45th to connect into the existing sidewalk? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure we understood
Okay.
what we're talking about. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elson.
I guess I have a question. So we've definitely heard from the engineer now on, in summary, we're kind of boxed in as far as being able to approach this from a la carte kind of situation where we can pick stuff apart without triggering some additional risk. We saw the city manager bring the option of potentially $400,000 in shared costs through possible annexing with Sedgwick County and sound like they were willing to work with us on that. That's very encouraging. That's good news, certainly. I guess question for you, Mr. Mayor, was there, on the previous meeting, you mentioned the possibility of looking at any other ways to bring in some form of payment on something. Is there anything that we don't know about yet that you were able to uncover?
Nothing that I've heard of, but I
Okay.
don't know if you heard of anything, Mr. Lasher.
We haven't. What we want to focus on is because we know that Woodlawn and 53rd are both priorities. And so, and the big concern from you all we're looking at was the debt service of both of those. And that does become very substantial or something to be concerned about. So I think we'll negotiate with Sedgwick County. I mean, they've got quite a bit of ARPA funds. Would they be willing to give us some more? I don't know, but from my initial conversation, they said they would be fine paying 10%. That now we'll ask for more. And maybe we'll explain why, because of the cost has increased and all those kind of things. But we don't know of any for Woodlawn. The difficulty you run into is that once you award it, it's a project. And so it's not like we're trying to build something and we need money to build it. We've already dedicated to doing that. But what we're going to try to focus on is still get 53rd done, but as cheap as we can, and maybe look at alternatives there where we can get partially or all of it funded, so that in the end, in 6 months, you've got 2 projects done, but we really paid, the amount we paid was for the Woodlawn project.
Mm-hmm. I guess, thank you for that, Mr. City Manager. Woodlawn is the center of our city. It's the main thoroughfare through the middle. And Bel Aire's got, 56 miles of road? I have that. This project is certainly biting a lot more than we were initially looking at. But if we're going to, I don't know, just looking at the numbers and hearing from the engineer, and I came into this meeting thinking, I think we need to go forward with this as is. I would like to see alternative options. I think if we look at saying no to this project right now and push it off, I don't see us re-engaging within a couple of years. I don't know. It's tough to predict the future, right? But the way things are shaping up, looking at the latest numbers from our finance director, looking at what our capital improvement plan, that would be our money that we designate for street repair. The immediate first 2 years following this project in 2023, 2024, we have a lot less than we have been spending on the roads due to this. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the risk. I think that any delay or holding this off, we looked at, is there a possibility of piecemealing this thing away? And even if we could do that, I still wouldn't be in favor of that. So if KDOT wasn't restricting us, so if we could take out the sidewalk or take out the traffic light or take away the trees and the landscaping, even if we could do that right now and say, take $500,000 off to do a couple of things, I would not be in favor of that. I think we should keep it all together, because anything we take out is going to be missed. And anything we take out, if we decide, hey, in three years or whatever, we want to put that back in, all these individual things are like $100,000 to $200,000. And I mean, except for a particular street repair project that we have, I don't see this council really having a strong appetite for, let's go back now with added potential costs, or, it's going to cost more than just that little chunk that we deduct from whatever this list of costs are. So it's going to put a pinch on our ability to do road repairs for a couple of years, but Woodlawn's got to get done. I wasn't aware the city manager was going to give us that presentation with the history. That certainly was interesting. There were things on there I didn't know. I'm glad I know it now. I'm definitely favoring going forward with this. I'll leave it to others to talk.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I guess my comments on this, I'm real appreciative of the presentation from the city manager. I thought that was really interesting. And I also really appreciate the analysis that you did on kind of the menu of options. I might be interested in, entertaining further discussion on that, if any of them could be discussed without, delaying the project. But since there's no flexibility there to not delay the project, I simply just don't think it's worth delaying the project for the potential of saving $100,000 at this point, that cost of delaying it is likely going to be eroded through increases in bids and through frustration and inconvenience that the public's going to experience as a result of the delay of the project. So I think at this point I'm still leaning towards moving forward as is, and I think we should go down that path.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
sometimes in sports they say it's better to be lucky than good, and in this case, I think we've had both bad luck and we've been a little bit good. We got bad luck on this pricing. I mean, it's super frustrating that this came in over what we wanted. We couldn't control that. I'm super upset about it. When I heard about it, I was very frustrated. But the part we've been good is we've worked very hard, put policies in place to be able to sell land, so we can't afford to do this. So we don't want to. We wish we could spend $1 million less on this and do other things with that $1 million. That is incredibly annoying. But the option of saying, well, let's not take the not use the $5 million to do a significant a cheap job on Woodlawn, to me, is not the way to go. And even taking $100,000 out for the grass or the trees, like I want our city to be beautiful. And when they come into Bel Aire, I don't want them to everybody to know they came into Bel Aire, because this is where we do things, cheaply. And so I'm frustrated. I'm very upset and not happy we got unlucky. But I don't see a great opportunity where we can move out of this without it being more of a detriment. I hope that something happens where we'll be able to get 53rd done the way we originally wanted to. I don't know if we will or not. And we continue to talk about this, but I wish this wouldn't have happened. I wish we would have been both good and lucky, but we weren't in this case. But I don't see a way of being able to go backwards. I think we got to do it.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
now that I get to talk, I'm not as positive as you guys. First off, I want to point out, had we not refinanced the debt, we would have to turn down this street. We would not have been able to take on a new bond. We would have been right back where we were before when we said we couldn't afford it. So that's why I'm cautious about taking on this debt. I think it's getting us too close to the point again where we can't afford something else. So some questions. Somebody said that your engineering plan would not be good in the future. Why would that be?
The current plan?
Yes.
Oh, if I said
If
something.
we waited a year or 2 years, would the
Those
current
plans
plan
could
still
be
be
bid
valid?
again. No, the plans would be good.
Okay, well, I heard somebody say they wouldn't
Okay.
be. Also, your 20-year design, when did that start? Because I think those plans started 5 years ago or more.
It started, I think we called 2023 the year that the project, that's year one. So 2043 was our future year.
So you think we will make it that far without having to
I
put
think
another
you'll make
2
it
lanes
further
and
than
spend
that.
more money on it?
I think the traffic study used some conservative numbers, and I think you're going to get beyond 20 years.
That was based
Okay.
on a 4-year.
If
flat
I
rate,
think it was a
3%.
3% growth everywhere, and then certain lots that aren't developed today would be developed on top of that. And
So it's
that's,
a 3-year percentage growth year over year. Is that what you're
yes, year
saying?
over year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, here's some questions for Ty. You said that the state could tell us we had to go ahead with the project. What happens if they do that? Do they pay for some of it? Can they force us to pay?
No,
for
I
it?
don't know that. I don't know that. Well, I think they could accept the bids, and but I don't know. If we decided not to approve the money, I don't know that it would go forward. So I think realistically, they could. I mean, because the bids were with KDOT. I think realistically, what will happen is they will just turn them down if you decide nothing to do, because like you said, it would be difficult because you would still have to approve the financing piece of it for our part. So they
That's
could do
what
it,
threw me
but
when you
they're
said
not
that
going to
they
do
could
it. They're
accept
going to
the bid.
say dump the project.
Okay.
Because Bel Aire doesn't want to pay for it.
You also brought up other KDOT projects. And again, if we take on this debt, we won't be able to take on other KDOT projects. So if they come along in 2 or 3 years and say, we want to build something at Webb and 254, we're going to have to say we're still broke. We can't do it anyway.
Well, that's a possibility. The thing that, if you look at Ted's numbers, he was looking out at 2027 and you would have, almost $1 million that you could put forward towards projects. So again, and that's varying on land sales.
We
We're
don't
going to
have that
sell
much
some more
more
land
land to
between
sell.
now and then.
And
Don't know.
all of these projections that say we got more money take away from residential street improvements and 45th Street improvement and 53rd Street improvements, tying it up in big projects. And we can't keep ignoring parts of the city just to have a nice gateway into the city. You come in and it's great, and then you turn off down one road and it's potholes. I don't care how nice it was for the first mile. If I hit a pothole in the mile and a quarter, okay, I've lost my image by then. And also the Sedgwick County portion, how much does Sedgwick County actually have in land that's under this street? I'm guessing it's more than 10% because they've got everything south of the railroad track. And
So they have it would be the east half of Woodlawn. So from the center line of Woodlawn to the edge of the right of way is what they own, and it's from the railroad tracks to 37th Street.
okay, I'd be looking for a lot more than 10% based on that.
And again, that's like I said, they threw that number out.
Okay,
And
I'm
so we're
saying I
going to
want
ask
more than
and
10% because
we'll,
that's more than 10% of the road.
and we'll figure
It's
we're
probably
going to figure
20%
all that
of the road
out.
or more even.
So it could be, but I don't want to tell you that we're going to get $1 million from them and
Well,
we get
I'm not sure we're even
400,000.
going to
So,
get the 400,000. So,
um,
but I think we should be aiming a lot higher than 10%.
sure.
Okay. And the trees and sod, can we delay that part of the project? Does it have to be done in the 1 year time frame? If we come up with the money in a year and a half or something, find some other way to finance this outright instead of borrowing money, can we?
And remain part of the KDOT project? No.
So they've got a completion date that they have to have all the trees and sod and everything in. And if we
Yes.
change that, we're starting over again. About said something else, but you can all use your imaginations. It's probably not as bad as what you were imagining. Okay. I could probably live with this, but if we do this, I am against any other bond projects. I want to totally cancel what we're talking about for 53rd, 45th, everything, because I just don't think we have the resources to get that close to how much money we got coming in. And I'd really would have preferred that this be a 4-lane instead of a 3-lane. It's unfortunate that I didn't get to make that decision.
So any other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsa or Dr. Schroeder?
I appreciate you. We've called an extra meeting and you went through the effort and we've made a bunch of people come, and I feel like we've done everything we can. We appreciate all the extra people, from Kate, from our engineer here and everybody that came in. Ty did extra work. This has been a frustrating experience in the sense of the price, and I feel like we've gathered all the information, and I've heard even Councilman Welch bring up some questions. I just don't see another. I haven't been provided with another answer that is other than we're going to probably need to go forward with this project. I'm open to hearing another answer. That's an option, but I just haven't. And so we can express our frustrations. I think it's valuable. We should get more information that's valuable. I just haven't seen another, well, here's the other option that I think's better. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve a resolution certifying that the city pledges the requirement amount of $3,872,000 to match maximum federal funds. The city share is to be remitted to the Kansas Department of Transportation on or before 11/11/21 for payments for construction work and engineering on Woodlawn Reconstruction Project, Woodlawn Street from 37th Street through 45th Street, and authorize the mayor and council members to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
I did not vote.
Oh, you did not vote. I'm sorry.
I can't go either way. I don't think
Okay.
either way is
You
correct.
want
So
to
I'm
just
just
go?
gonna,
You
I'm
want
gonna
to just abstain?
abstain
Okay.
just
okay.
on principle.
Correct the
I know it
count.
has no value. It's passed, but
to correct the count, the vote is 401 with Mr. Welch abstaining. And I would like to say well, it was a frustrating surprise for us to get this price. I do appreciate all the extra effort of yourself, Mr. Engelmeyer, and Ann, Stevens, and Mr. Lasher, and Mr. Henry, and anyone else who's gone through extra effort on this. I think we would have been remiss to not have at least gone through this exercise and asked these questions to make sure that this is the right thing to do, because we just can't step off on this kind of a cost and not have tried to uncover every stone that there is out there. So I appreciate the help and I appreciate the extra effort. So thank you. Moving on to item B, consideration of resolution authorizing completion of certain improvements of Woodlawn and authorizing issue of general obligation bonds. So, Mr. Henry, you have some things you'd like to put in, tell us about this?
Really, with the unique opportunity for KDOT, just what they do is we're going to hand over $3.8 million to them, and they're going to pay all the bills for this project and get out of my finance office, but I need to have the money to give them. So what we're doing here is going straight to bond with about $2.5 million, which will cover the 4.3 that we need for this project. And I want to go straight to bond. About 1.89% interest rate right now projected. So we're going to capitalize on the good interest rates that the city and the world's seeing right now. There is some structural questions we can ask going forward if the council is concerned about that 1 to 2 year dip in let's say extra money we have to throw at other street projects. We can structure this debt so we capitalize maybe the first year or two, meaning that payment wouldn't be due till 2024. What that does, and I can give you both scenarios, it would probably increase about $20,000 a year for debt service savings, but it gives us a little bit of buffer if we wanted to not see such a dip in other project funds. But that's something we can decide later. What we had before us is just the authorization to bring it forward, and I'll sit with S&P. We'll get a rating, and then we'll get this bond closed before the end of the year. There's a schedule in your packet as well. And Kevin Cowan's here if he wants to add or have any additional questions about this process.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I believe we should go ahead with this bond issue. I fear that next year interest rates will go up on us some, maybe not a lot, but some. I had another thought there too, and I forgot what it was now. I would not want to wait. I want to go ahead and start making payments about the same time the road finishes. So in a year.
Okay. Yeah. These would probably have an October principal payment. So the majority of it would be next October for our first payment. There'll be a little interest payment in April usually. So, but our budget's able to absorb that as well.
I'm against paying interest. We don't have to.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Elstoff or Mr. Smith?
Myself.
Mr. Smith. Sorry.
This bond authorization is for the 2.5 million overage. It is not for the original 1.8 million that was estimated. I think I understand that original 1.8 million that was estimated is still on a temporary note. Is that correct?
That's correct. We took that out late last year. And some of the reason I like to use the reason we would keep that open is there are some expenses that are not tied into this project. So if let's see here. So like right away was 100% city. If you can envision when we went through all those. So until we know the exact price of that, then we'll bond out that 1.8. But whatever you want to.
Yeah, I was just wondering. We probably know we're going to spend most, if not all, of that 1.8 on this project. Should we go ahead and roll it into the same bond issue right now? kind of, why should we or should we not do that? Is what I'm interested in.
So in doing that, we would move that permanent finance payment up to next year instead of waiting till 2024 for that $125,000 to hit our budget. So if you wanted to roll in at all with one issuance, we would be looking at the full effect in 2022 instead of the 150,000 in debt service in 2022. And then 125 comes on in 2024 to complete the 275,000 a year.
So you're kind of proposing it right now to smooth the increase in debt service out.
That, and I prefer to permanent bond with projects that are exactly how much we need. So say we only spend 1.6, I can return that $200,000 and we're not essentially paying a permanent bond on that extra 200. So you have exact numbers once we're completely done with the project, and then we go out to permanent bond. You also run into some arbitrage issues. It gets really deep into the bond financing. That's why Wichita and most of the cities will temp note to bond.
So do we think that it saves us money or costs us money over the long term to do it this way?
You're going to cost a little bit, just because right now we're capitalizing these first 3 years on that 1.8. Now, when we went out to bond, I'm trying to think what interest rate we got on temp notes in 2020 at the end. I imagine it was sub 1%. So we're not talking, to me, we're not talking a lot of money, but I can get that number for you if you wish.
And will we be locked in on that strategy with this tonight, or can we change that amount and increase that up after we make this authorization?
I believe we can change, but I'll defer to Kevin,
Okay.
our bond counsel.
Yes, can it
go to 3.8?
Yeah, if we wanted it to be 2.5 plus the 1.8 when we actually go issue it, so that it's the entire Woodlawn project being bonded, is that something that we need to decide now? Or
No.
Okay.
Your initial comment leading into your question was exactly right. This is sort of completion financing. So what's authorized tonight is to get you to the finish line, but it's not the detail of the actual issue. And so this would establish that you can issue up to 2.5 million for the completion financing, as I call it. But the other moving parts about actual issue, payment dates, do we want to do more than 2.5 million, meaning we would pull some temporary note financing into this? That would still be to come after tonight.
Okay.
But probably pretty soon as we approach year end.
Okay, any additional discussion concerning the resolution of authorizing
Mr. Mayor,
general obligation bonds? Dr. Schroeder.
I'll motion to approve a resolution authorizing completion of certain improvements to Woodlawn Avenue in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city to pay costs of such improvements and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Elsoff. Any additional discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Motion carries 5-0. I hesitated intentionally. So, thank you.
Once we agree to the street, I'm all for doing the bond.
Okay.
Plow
All right.
forward. We can't go backwards.
Move on to item C, discussion of 53rd Street reconstruction and other street repairs. And that was really kind of a workshop item, I think. But do we want to have some discussion about that? Because I don't know that we know enough right now what to talk about. But
Yeah,
we
I
can
think
talk about it.
if you're, unless you want to talk some more about it, I think we know that we're going to move forward with Woodlawn. Give us a couple months to see what comes out of this infrastructure. If it does get approved, on what we can do with ideas. Let's get to the end of the year and Ted can get his financials done. We can see what we've got, what we're looking at for next year. Because some of that, we talked about doing some engineering on 45th. We talked about engineering 53rd, and maybe we would have some money to do that. It just depends on how we ended up this year. Unless you want to talk specifically about 53rd and other projects, I'd like to just wait and give us a couple months and let's look at it again.
I'd like to make a comment on that. Since we are approaching our limit of what we can afford to pay on bonds, I do not think we need to be worrying about engineering studies on 45th, because that'll be another $2 or $3 million bond we'd have to lump, and we can't afford it right now. So there's no reason to do the engineering.
Well, the engineer on 53rd, we were just talking about, I think Garver's
That's two
here, but it
different,
was around
40.
100,000 or 200,000 just to rebuild it as it is.
But we also were looking at $500,000 to engineer 45th Street.
45th, yeah. And now, again, that's a discussion to have, but what we've learned on this one is that if you get the engineering done before you submit your project, your numbers come up a little bit better. So, and we want to get 45th. I think that's the council's plan, is to get it in the next TIP for WAMPO. Probably looking at 5 years or so on that. But I think it's worth having that discussion to maybe even still move forward with the engineering on 45th Street. But again, let us get through this year and see if there's an infrastructure bill, what it looks like, and what our funds, and then after the first year, let's talk streets some more.
So just to be clear, we already authorized the engineering work on 53rd Street, correct?
Yes, and
Yes.
that was what, 94,000.
Yeah, I knew it was right at 100. I
Yeah,
thought it was a little
yeah.
under, but yeah.
And as John mentioned earlier, yes, MKEC, those plans will be, unless you change the scope of the road, what Garver's going to look at on 53rd can sit there for a year or 2 years or whatever, unless you come back and say, let's make it a 5-lane, then it changes everything. But getting it done now doesn't mean that we can't 2 years later come back and say, here's the plans. We feel more comfortable. Let's do something.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
can we get an update on the patch repairs to 53rd Street and where we're at with that? And I know we had council action to close that street to through traffic. What I'm also wondering is, do we need council action to open that street to through traffic once the repairs are completed? I guess I'm just interested where we are with that, and if we should go ahead and discuss approving that road to be opened once the repairs are completed.
I think the way the motion was, we said we were going to close it until the repairs were finished. So I don't think we need to take any action, and we may already have the barricades down.
Yeah, I was kind of telling to Ken, I certainly hope that no council action was needed because the repairs are done and the road's open.
Great.
So all the
Okay.
barricades are done. It's kind of a moot issue.
Okay. I guess we got the
It
answer to
is still a
that.
little rough, but
Yeah, I think I was remembering we closed the road, and then after that, we took an action to approve the repairs. So I just wanted to make sure we were covered there.
do we need to keep the speed limit at 30 on that? Because I drove down through there yesterday, even though it was closed, and it was rather bumpy. All those new repairs. There weren't potholes, but there were bumps. I think PP&J was actually removing the signs at the time I drove down.
Yeah, we did also remove those 35-mile-an-hour signs because it's posted just still as it was prior
So
to.
we're gonna let them do 40 down there.
Back to 40.
I can't recall what the speed limit was. I
It
think
was 40.
it was 40, then
Yes.
it's back to 40.
Yeah.
So, yes. And the only way to really get rid of those bumps is to do a mill and overlay or just even mill and grind it. But
I just thought it might be good if we could keep it slow. Might not tear it up so fast.
it's more the heaviness of the vehicles than anything else.
Any additional discussion about 53rd reconstruction and other street repairs? We exhausted our budget, I guess not. Okay. I don't have a need for executive session. Does anyone need an executive session for anything?
No.
Move on to discussion and future issues. Anything that people would like to discuss for future issues? I guess we'll move on to adjournment. So,
Mr. Mayor.
motion for adjournment. Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't always, your voices are enough similar. I just don't know for sure who said it. All right. Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion on adjournment? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No one opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you.